never know how to start these things. I hate the sound of my own voice. I always have. Even when starting working in radio, I worked as a volunteer at a local hospital radio station. 1 a.m. until 5 a.m., the quiet time with Jonathan Walker. A show where I would talk in a soft-spoken, gentle tone, playing classics such as Frank Sinatra, Elvis, and Ray Charles for all the old biddies that were plagued with insomnia, and the staff that wandered the quiet, dark corridors of the hospital tending to the sick and needy. Not only were those helping those in need of care, they helped me get through an arduous 4-hour night shift with a shitty hospital radio station. That was when all I had to worry about was what song I was going to play next. Simple times. Anyway, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is this is probably pointless, but I'm going to try anyway. If you're listening to this and you can hear my droning utterance, then I'm glad to have you. I'm coming to you from the abandoned building of the Northern Radio 87.6 FM here in glorious, rainy Aberdeen. If you're hearing this, then you'll also know that the world has gone to shit. Turns out this Iris 22 was something to worry about, eh? But look, if you've been living under a rock for the past 18 months, then let me catch you up. The world is over. To paraphrase one of the greatest directors of our time, and one who I hope is held up somewhere having the time of his life, George A. Romero. There is no more room in hell, and the dead walk the earth. Yep, that's right, folks, you heard me. The dead are walking the earth. Rotters, shamblers, infected, zombies. Or as I heard from someone I met once, scabbies. I prefer the term minx, describes them perfectly, I think. Anyway, I've not been spending my time during what people are calling the fall, just sitting on my arse. No. I've been searching for people's stories. Survivors to find out how they're surviving this utter shite that we find ourselves in. I gathered hours of first-hand accounts from survivors I've met. They've spoken in detail about how they survived, and some have even recorded their voices, so we can hear the brave men and women who are surviving and fighting those things. I have worked tirelessly gathering these testimonies, and I've spent a lot of time repairing the station. I've managed to get a signal boosted after several attempts, and some choice words I've shouted at backup generators to get my voice out. Maybe something in these stories can help you, give you advice, help you survive. The first one I want to share with you I found on a ship docked here in the harbour of Aberdeen. I was exploring down there searching for the ships for supplies, and I found a box. Inside the box I found a voice recorder. The file name was just letters and no indication of who the person was, but I listened to what was on it. I don't even have words. Over the coming hours and days, I'm going to share these stories with you, and while I've made it my life's work to entertain people on the radio, it's not my intention here. I want these stories to inspire you to keep fighting, to keep going on and keep surviving. You never know, you might learn something. I've edited this piece of footage to make it sound a little bit more exciting, but the words are the survivor's own. So dear listener, this is our first account, and I can only call it the lucky one.
There is something quite romantic about the idea of being shipwrecked. Cast away on a desert island, down to loincloth and banana leaf slippers, a crude spear to catch fish that you bake on the roaring fire you set every night of your easily bearable solitude. The loneliness is refreshing at first, but always palatable. The weight loss isn't debilitating. It is practically a diet retreat with mindful reflection as you scan the horizon for your inevitable rescue. This, however, is far from reality, certainly my reality. The reality of a world falling into shadow because of the virus. The Iris virus. Iris 22, aka I-22, IR-22. Catch 22, the BBC trying to be clever. The Iris strain, the bloom, the rot, the grey flu, the dark wake, biter's fever, the walking sickness, call it what you will. It all fell under my radar. I didn't ordinarily watch the TV news. I found it too depressing. I didn't read the newspapers for the same reason. Other than catching the odd front page headline of my fellow commuters, I was blissfully unaware of the iris virus, until a bloody creature came running at me across the departure lounge of Inverness Airport. The virus had its origins in South America, according to the Daily Telegraph. This much I did know. It was straight out of the Amazon, a mysterious flu strain linked to hospital deaths, I read, but then skimmed the rest of the story. I'm healthy after all, why would I care? And so I stood waiting for my connecting flight, skimming the magazine and newspaper rack of the newsagents. NHS urges calm. Sage, too. The Prime Minister echoes the guidance of his chief scientific advisor in that the I-22 virus is unlikely to spread too widely throughout the UK. I glanced briefly over what was one of many examples of the tabloids foaming at the mouth. The pure sensationalism of the gutter press. In an eye-catching horror font, viral video of reanimated patient. But in the small print that it was a story debunked by experts. Despite there being no evidence of bite transmission according to the CDC, zombies on the cover of The Sun and the Daily Star and the Mirror. No one I'd take seriously uses the Z word. I left the newsprint where it was and purchased a bottle of still water and a packet of extra strong mints. That would do. My go-to short-haul flight survival kit that fits easily into any pocket. I'd seen the flight crew for the short hop to Belfast come through security. They were behind me at the X-ray machine, fast-tracked and ahead by the time I put on my belt and watch after getting my bag back. Pilot, co-pilot, and a single steward. They could have been the same man, caught at different stages of his life. The grey-haired pilot, his greying number 2, and the younger steward, all in crisp white shirts and ties, neat short haircuts, upright posture, pulling along their luggage, talking, joking. One, the co-pilot, was coughing, a lot, violently. As they passed the gate crew, it was too much for his lungs to suppress, and the polite fist made to cover his mouth was insufficient to stop the noisy, wet heaving that followed. I watched the steward run off as the captain patted the man on the back, saying something into his ear. Maybe that he should sit this one out, but surely that's what co-pilots do anyway. But no, once the steward had returned with a cup of water, they walked down the steps and out of sight towards the plane. And then the attack happened. It was surreal. As I sat contemplating what to order for dinner when I finally got home that night, there was a scream over my right shoulder. A commotion. As I turned and stood to see red on the blue tartan of the gift shop worker. She was looking down in horror at blood on her hands. She was bleeding profusely from a facial wound. Not a cut. It looked like she'd been bitten by a rabid dog. Her skin torn from the flesh. And as I looked up, that rabid dog was staring directly at me. A businessman, in his late 50s, early 60s, in an ill-fitting, off-the-peg grey suit. Slip-on shoes, white socks. I noticed the detail as I looked up his form before my eyes locked with his. They were mad, as red as the blood that dripped from his mouth. He was chewing, not gum, but a nose, a piece of cheek, an eyebrow. Whatever his rancid teeth tore from the face of the woman in tartan, who until then courteously greeted all those coming through the departure lounge, offering to show them local whiskies and haggis, deer products, a rubber duck shaped like the Loch Ness Monster. Nothing I needed, nothing I wanted, but I thanked her anyway politely. And with an hour before boarding, I would peruse her wares more than once, opting for a pack of Highland shortbread to tide me over and stifle the desire to shop unnecessarily. I didn't know what to do. I was equally puzzled and frozen to the spot. This man, had attacked someone in public in such a vicious and carnivorous way, in front of numerous witnesses, and he didn't seem to care. I was rooted to the spot, a statue, frozen physically, whilst my brain panicked as he started shambling in my direction, bloody teeth chomping, hands raised as he lunged towards me, to more screaming, not just from the injured worker, but onlookers, now the other passengers around me. Every airport has armed police on security duty. Inverness was no exception, with screams filling the air as the man was 10 feet from me and closing. I saw him fall and thought he had tripped in the split second before a gunshot rang out.
Arm, please! Put your hands on your head!
More screaming. Shouting too from the armed men running to the fallen monster, telling people to get away, get away.
Now!
Then there was a hand on my shoulder. It made me jump, a member of the gate crew. "We need to go," she said. "Go?" I questioned. "Surely we have to give statements or something. There are procedures, protocols to be followed." "Now!" she shouted. Bending to pick up my bag and thrusting it into my hand, she ushered me through the double doors that led me and 20 others down a set of steps and into the cold air of the late evening. I'd flown on smaller aircraft. This particular model had 12 rows of 3 seats, one on the left of the aisle, 2 on the right, with me in the back row, confused by earlier events, but now trying to sleep, or at least keep my eyes closed, as the winds of the North Atlantic buffeted us as we flew from the coast of Scotland at a west by northwest bearing. The crew knew the drill. Late night flight, a few oil riggers and me, a random suit. Even with the craziness of the airport attack, it was time for salty snacks and miniature bottles of whiskey to calm everyone's nerves. There is a passenger who doesn't want the complimentary drink or mini bags of snacks, the heated lemon-scented flannel, and ordinarily that would be me, stupidly. But still out of sorts from having seen my first killing, I took 2 bags of cheese and onion crackers in a daze, stuffing them into my gilet pockets, joining the bottle of water and roll of extra strong mints. The plane took off with or without the consent of the conning tower, and looking down at the ground as we climbed from the runway at a steep angle, I could swear I saw shuffling human forms on the ground, all heading towards the main terminal as a larger plane came into land. I was tired already. It had been a long day, a long week working in the north of Scotland. And once my heightened adrenaline levels finally dropped, I managed to fall asleep, or an approximation of sleep where the events of earlier ran through my mind on repeat. I was sitting in the airport, minding my own business. The taste of shortbread in my mouth, buttery, crumbs still on my lips and teeth. Then a scream, a woman's scream. The shop girl covered in blood, missing part of her face, and the monster bearing down on me as I just stood there, frozen to the spot, letting it happen. That face, the madness, the horror, the bloody teeth and clawing fingers, and then more screams. But these screams were not in my head. I opened my eyes. I don't know how long I was out, or whether it was the alarm sound coming through the open, bloody cockpit door, or the violent shaking of the plane that woke me. But when it did, I was panicked. The lurching of the plane as it pitched up and down, ascending into the storm, then descending quickly, immediately terrified me. I have flown hundreds upon hundreds of times. I have experienced bad weather the world over, turbulence, but nothing like this. Something was wrong. The cockpit controls damaged, bloody, and unmanned. We were going down. I could feel it. I was in the aisle seat of the rearmost row. The window blinds were down, as is the common procedure for overnight flights, but I needed to see. To do that, though, I had to release my death grip on the handrests, and there was no way my sweating palms and fingers were willing to do so. The steward appeared. He was covered in blood, his white shirt drenched from neck to navel, his skin pale, his eyes petrified. He stammered something about the captain, about someone dying, someone being restrained, and about us being off course. He was still trying to do his job, even with the craziness going on around us. He checked that my seatbelt was still fastened correctly, illustrated the brace position once, and reiterated that the life jacket was under the seat. Now, I'm not a particularly confident swimmer, so this petrified me, more so than anything else that had happened that day. So when he returned to the front of the plane to check on the oil riggers, and then cautiously enter the cockpit, panicking visibly a little as he did so, a form under a blanket in one of the seats, I tried to reach under mine, and I couldn't. The seat belt, you see, so tight it was digging into my belly, and the soft tissue around my hips restrained me. I waited for the building moment of weightlessness coming from the plane's cyclical movement, and unclipped my belt, leaning over to the window and sliding the blind up. I couldn't see anything outside other than the flash of the navigation lights reflecting on the wing and side of the plane. Red flash, green flash, red flash seen through the water droplets racing across the glass. I did wonder why they chose those colours, and it was this thought I had in my head as we hit the sea, at such a speed and at such an angle that I was first thrown forward into the row of seats in front of me, and then up into the ceiling as we bounced before being slammed back in my seat, breathless and disoriented. Icy water began to well around my feet, and I quickly unclipped my belt, looking forward to see the sea pouring through a gaping hole in the front of the plane where part of the ceiling and the wall was missing by the front door. Lights flickered and dimmed, sparks, red emergency bulbs, and the sheer dark of the night sky above and the black ocean below. I looked back at the tail, now lifting into the air, and made my move. I pulled the life jacket from under my seat and put it over my head, uninflated. And then I leapt for the back door of the plane. I didn't read any of the signs. I just grabbed the red handle and turned it in an arc, praying that this would make it open. And it did. And the chaos of outside suddenly shocked me. Patches of the sea were on fire. The single jet engine on the rear fin screaming so nothing else could be heard above it. I was mesmerized. stuck in the moment in the doorway. Yet again I couldn't move. My fingers refused to release their grip on the frame, knowing that beyond this was almost certain death. But then the inflatable escape ramp blew up. Unfurling itself in front of me, it woke me, and I carefully released one hand from the frame of the door and reached for it. It wasn't yet fully inflated. Maybe it was damaged. It would later catch fire when floating over a patch of ignited fuel. But for now it was my only option. I gripped it hard and tried to jump onto it. I did not know if this was a mistake. It was like launching yourself from the side of a swimming pool onto one of those cheap lilos you can buy from seafront gift shops, along with buckets and spades and shell animals and kiss me quick hats. I didn't bounce, and the raft as it was barely kept me afloat, bending in the middle under my weight into a defiant V shape. The waves lifted and dropped me. The current pulled me away from the fast disappearing aircraft. It was then that I noticed I was in the middle of a lightning storm. Forks of brilliant white light drew themselves across the night sky, illuminating the low cloud above me. My breathing matched the waves' movement, ensuring that the growing panic in my lungs was forced out at the peaks before inhaling as I hit the troughs. My life jacket was still to be inflated. Even though it was over my head, its light flashing for me, I pulled the cord, and the intense pressure hit my throat like someone trying to strangle me. I hadn't tied it around my waist, you see. It was just over my head, and now it was choking me. So I pulled it off and reached an arm through it like a child's armband. Water wings, I think they're known as, and I leant into it in the water and struggled with the awkward one-sided buoyancy. I was doing everything wrong, and I knew it, the opposite of all those hundreds upon hundreds of safety demonstrations I'd seen. The plane, I didn't see it again. With the pitching and rolling of the sea and the wind and the storm and the current and my fear, I was always being pulled away from the crash site. The raft, for what good it did me, and the life jacket kept me afloat, barely. I was desperate not to drown, and so kept as rigid and as still as possible to not jeopardize my own safety. It was a case of staying alive by whatever means possible, and something as simple as trying to turn around to watch the plane sink just wasn't on the cards. If surviving the airport attack and the impact and then the escape from the plane was good fortune, then the next moment was perfect timing. At the peak of a wave, just before rolling down and deep again, lightning struck the sea on the horizon. And there, in the distance, was the shadow of an island. I questioned myself, had I imagined it? I looked again when hitting the crest, but it was pitch black again. With the odds of another ethereal illumination occurring just as I hit the top of a wave being incredibly remote, I made a life or death decision. And I started kicking for land. And I was kicking. With my right arm now locked in place, holding the life jacket between my shoulder and my neck, and my left still gripping the ever-deflating life raft. I could only rely on my legs for as long as they could move before fatigue and the cold stopped them in their tracks. I don't know how long I swam. Each second was a terror-filled nightmare. A slip of the hand, and my head would go under the water, and I would see the man's face again and hear the screams, and then I'd come up choking in panic. But then I'd stabilise myself and start kicking again. I had no idea if I was going in the right direction, or even if the island was real. Had I imagined it? But I had to try. It was that or giving up. And so I floated for as long as I could, scared of the idea of dying of exposure or drowning, and kicking until my legs cramped up. I needed to keep trying to stay alive. I know in the movies anyway that people in dire situations let their minds wander to those back home, their loved ones. You see flashbacks of romantic moments and memories of kids and weddings or whatever. But that is fiction. Or it was to me. I was very much in the moment, the real world, the sea. The constant fear of drowning, it was as tiring as the swim itself. And then something scratched my leg, and I screamed. Jaws is my favourite movie, hands down, without a doubt. But for me, the movie is about the three men, Quint, Brody, and Hooper. The shark is just the catalyst. I don't know how many times I've seen it, maybe 20. Maybe more. I've seen the documentary, the interviews with Dreyfus when he explains that the shark not working, hence the rewrite with the drums. I've seen the interview on Martha's Vineyard with Robert Shaw. He looks like my dad, incidentally. I have a Amity Shark fishing t-shirt, paraphrasing Quint's promise that for that money you get the head, the tail, the whole damn thing. I would see the sequels. I didn't much care for the Michael Caine effort, especially with the change in the ending, but I liked 2. I saw 3 in 3D at the cinema, and that bred in me a love for the genre. A healthy infatuation, if you like. Deep Blue Sea, I love them all, though they do fuel the nightmare. You see, I had panicked. Something had touched my leg, and now I was having a full-on screaming fit in the middle of the ocean. I expected to be pulled under at any moment, and so I kicked out at an imaginary great white shark that was circling beneath me. I prepared myself mentally to deal with the first bite of those razor-sharp teeth, but none came. And returning to reality, I found that I wasn't moving either. I was no longer being pulled by the current, but rather my top body was being moved a little by the waves, as my legs and my raft stayed motionless. I reached lower with a foot and touched something again. I panicked. I froze, but it was solid. I moved my foot up and down. It was rough, a rock. I kicked at it. It was a rock. It was not moving. And upon several touches with my sneakered foot, I could tell it was about the size of a bistro table. You know, the round ones you see pictured with red and white tablecloths in European cafes. I clambered up as far as I could, and for the first time since leaving the plane, I could pause and relax. Sure, it was actually fully submerged, with the top perhaps 2 or 3 feet below the surface of the sea, but it meant that I could rest. I didn't need to swim or float. I could catch my breath and assess. The first thing I did, and I should have done this hours earlier, was put the life jacket over my head and fasten it around my waist, tying the drawstring and knotting it, recalling those safety demonstrations, and then topping up the air in the jacket through the tube. Eddie Izzard, the English comedian, joked about this, not wanting to need the extra top-up. But I needed that extra top-up, if anything for confidence, for I knew that the next step would be crucial. I would be leaving my first respite. The first respite I'd had since ditching in the sea, and I'll be leaving it for an unknown outcome. I then scoured the horizon in all directions, desperate to see something, anything. But now my eyes had fully adjusted to the dark, sore as they were with constant salt water washing over them. I could also see and hear clearly. The storm, the thunder had rolled away and taken the lightning with it, and now I was left with heavy rain. It was big drops, hard, torrential, stair-rodding they call it. The rain fell so hard it bounced back and hit me in the face as I lowered myself back into the water. And it was cold. The flashing light on my life jacket blinking with my heartbeat. Where was this island? It had to be there, and it was. For a moment, the blackness of the horizon gradually moving through slightly, ever so slightly, lighter shades of dark blue. Dawn was on its way, and now a black shape could be seen a mile away, maybe two. It's hard to tell, but a shape nevertheless. As a kid, we would complete swimming proficiency tests and were awarded sew-on fabric badges for 10 metres or 50 metres, 100. I don't know what they went up to. All I know is that I cheated for my only badge, the 10-metre swimming award. I touched down twice on the way, still accepted the reward. My mother was proud. I was not. I have swum a lot since then, but I never class myself as confident in the water. I don't like water up my nose, in my throat, in my eyes, and those facts alone make swimming clearly a difficult pastime for me. But this was different. This was survival. And now I had my life jacket fully inflated and correctly fastened. I would not be drowning. I would just be dying of hypothermia. And so I lowered myself into the water, still holding the rock until my shoulders were below the cold surface, and I launched myself. And that oddly brought back memories of those swimming lessons at school, holding onto the rail with my school friends and pushing off the ends of the pool to see how far we could go. I don't know how long that swim took. As I said, I was now living second to second, real time, trying to keep myself moving, living on adrenaline. Now I had the life jacket and nothing else. The raft had deflated at the rock, but I could now use my arms. I tried front crawl, then breaststroke, then back to front crawl, and my shoulders started to cramp up. I would grip the neckline of the life jacket with both hands and kick my legs for all I was worth until my quads burned. And then I just let the current take me. It felt like I was always moving in the right direction though. And then my feet felt something. Another rock. No, this was shingle. I stumbled forwards, crawling into the surf, up onto a pebble beach that would become my home. The storm was still all around me, waves crashing, rain pelting the top of my head, my face, now numb to the touch from the cold, but I was safe. I'd no longer be a victim of the sea, but I was not out of the water yet, so to speak. As I climbed the beach, all I could hear was my breathing. as if my ears were now internal, like I was holding a stethoscope to my own chest. My lungs felt weak and wet. My heart sounded strained. I was not out of the woods yet. I could still die right here from exposure. But I reached a patch of sand, soft and wet, and fell to my knees, rolling onto my back, and closed my eyes. Instantly I saw the shopkeeper missing part of her face, the steward bloodied and fearful, the body under the blanket in the cockpit standing over me. It caused me to wake with a jolt and sit bolt upright, and I found myself still on the beach, still on the island, and it was still raining. I had the bottle of water. It survived the swim, as had the 2 packets of snacks in my pockets and the packet of mints, which had partially dissolved and was now a single cylinder of sugar and mint essence. Scared that this was my last day on Earth, I had my final meal. I opened one of the bags and ate cheesy, oniony pretzels and something that resembled, in flavour anyway, a mint. That was then washed down with glorious gulps of still mineral water. I then curled into a ball on the sand, the life jacket as my pillow. I pulled my arms into my sopping wet clothing, skin on skin, to warm myself up, breathing hot breaths into my hands, then placing them on drying parts of my body. I would warm myself with my own body heat and breath, and hope and pray that this would not be my last night on Earth. There is something quite romantic about the idea of being shipwrecked, cast away on a desert island. The loneliness is refreshing at first and always palatable. The weight loss isn't debilitating. It is practically a diet retreat with mindful reflection as you scan the horizon for the inevitable rescue. But there would be no rescue for me. If I am to survive the world of the fallen, it will be here alone, on a speck of land in the middle of the sea, hundreds of miles from all the inevitable death caused by the rampaging Iris 22 virus as it destroyed the world. Am I the lucky one? Ask me in the morning.
The Fallen Diaries is written, edited and directed by Kieran Begg, starring Kieran Begg as Jonathan Walker. The Lucky One was written and performed by Darren Smith. If you would like to have your story read out on the Fallen Diaries, then please get in touch by emailing eerieearth@hotmail.com to have your story told. Thanks very much for listening. Bye bye for now.